Kai Bay.
I'm Jasper van Alderwegen.
And we put together MYRA together at the 50/50 Art Collective. We are connected as people since, we have been connected as people since kindergarten.
Yeah.
We've essentially been best of friends, since then. And it's quite special that we get to share not really our creative process, but to do our, we have the ability to create our own.
We have a similar visual style.
Yeah, our visual styles are very cohesive.
Connected at this point.
Yes.
So we decided to do a show together at 50/50.
Yes.
It's a series of my paintings and Kai's videos.
Which are traditional animations. I have to think about what I want to say about mine for a second. The content in mine largely relates to abstractive, negative content that I, by some means experience, and then it is the result of not overcoming that content, but I'm not really working into it, not changing it into anything positive, but carrying it with me into what I'm making, if that makes sense. Each animation takes quite a long time to complete as well, since they are done frame by frame. I'd approximate they are 10 to 15 hours per animation from start to finish, because the illustrations take a really long time. Then I have to do a sequence of movement that are also illustrations, and the digital monotonous process of organizing the slides in order not only organizing them in order, but centering them takes a very long time from start to finish. I do my illustrations with a fine tip Sharpie on wet paper, and that allows the ink to blow out and radiate out, and kind of creates a kind of maybe a dynamic that's sort of soft, that I'm trying to. It's
like a focus. It's a blurring of the image.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Right. It's
somewhere where my work crosses over, because my paintings start with the process of doing ink bleeds. So I wet the entire canvas and then just paint the canvas and let the ink just bleed out. So we have that in common with our work. We also, the next step to my process is to do a layer of fabric collage, which will be just another juxtaposing symbol or icon, or looking at iconography and stuff like that. And Kai's work also plays with that language of having a foreground and a background, or a visual play between two visual realms.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Essentially, for mine, the foreground is it's not the frame of the image. The frame is a separate thing, but the fundamental image doesn't really change. There's no narrative within my work. It's more like I've created moving paintings, because they function as paintings, because they for the most part don't change that much, except in the holes that are created by drawing on wet paper. Holes are created, and that's where I'll actually make the movement, which I will animate. So the foreground is like a somewhat static image. There'll be some shifts in its as I don't use a tripod, so it kind of creates this shifting of it, which I really like. But the more drastic movement is done behind the primary image, which I will create like individual drawings for that fluctuate and replicate movement. Yeah.
Thematically, I'd say our work both plays on ideas of like iconography, like I said, like religious iconography and myth, I'd say, and sort of juxtaposing that with ideas about the childhood and like more of a maybe a more naive approach.
Yeah.
Or headspace.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I'd say that would come out in your work too.
Yeah.
And that's sort of another connection that we have.
Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes I find myself thinking about my process and like not like undervaluing it, but seeing it as this very like juvenile thing. But I've come to realize that it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just the way it functions. It's just not super. Not that it's not complicated. There are a lot of different steps to it, but it is playful. Absolutely.
Yeah. Word for it.
Yeah. Thematically.
I think we also share an interest in graffiti, and what would be considered anti-style graffiti. You'd find more in Europe and stuff. Yeah, we draw lots of stylistic ideas from that too. Mm-hmm. So we also wanted to sort of play into that idea of bringing maybe a more spontaneous aspect into our work.
I think about like in the shapes I create, I think about letters a lot, even though there aren't that I can think of. No, there are no explicit letters in the piece I create, but they definitely inform the shapes I choose to make. The structure of letters.
Yeah, I'd say so too.
Yeah. Let me think. What can we say?
You have some influences from.
Oh, that's interesting.
I would say I look a lot at like German neo-expressionism. So like people like Sigmar Polka and Georg, what's his name? Georg Baselitz. Looking at the kind of horrific, somewhat, imagery that they were interested in post-war art. I'm sort of interested in that coming across in mine, but sort of having a play between what is maybe disturbing and maybe not disturbing, or like maybe playful. So there's sort of a weird play there.
I suppose I have influences, but I don't actually consume that much animation or spend a lot of time looking at art, honestly. Like I'm not taking courses relating to it, and I think it would be a good thing to start to do more. I think it would give me like a more holistic approach, potentially, and a more holistic understanding of, a complete understanding of what I'm doing. But at the moment, I also enjoy, I find I am susceptible to outside influence, like as everyone is, is influenced, but I just find it's very natural to be like influenced by what you're consuming in that moment. And for me, it's generally, like I'd say it's music more so than actual other visual artists. I like what it is. I like tacky. I I like to be entertained. That's another thing actually that I think mine. Why I work within animation is because I'm very I enjoy to be entertained. I enjoy movement. I find movement entertaining and interesting to watch, like more so than a still piece, like a lot of the time, not always, but I find like the more not immersive, but the more dynamic I can make something, the more I enjoy it, I guess.
Drain gang aesthetic.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely am inspired by Blade, right? By Blade, yes. Also, Young Thug, Chief Keef.
Shout out. Shouts out.
Shout out Chief Keef, shout out Young Thug. Brat Star, one of my favorite musicians. I think that's probably what's influencing me the most, and was influencing me the most when I made for the show. Yeah.
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 So when for you to start the whole thing, like for animation for you, when do you start feeling like, oh, this is what really attracts me? And
for me, I've only been doing animation for a year, I think, maybe less than a year. I found the process is just really time consuming, which is kind of a good thing for me. Like to have I don't know, I struggle with like remaining active a lot of the time. But when I feel the drive to engage in a project that I'm really excited about, like it can kind of consume me for a while, and that's a feeling that I definitely seek out and get from making animation. And it's helpful that it's very tedious. Animating is very tedious, but at the same time, it's the result that you get is just so satisfying.
And your drawing and painting practice, or your video practice sort of came from drawing and painting, right?
Yeah. I used to paint more. I used to paint, and the fundamental, the foundation of what I'm doing is illustration, essentially. That's the base of it.
It really is painting, pretty much.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
they really function as painting.
Yeah, they do function as paintings. There's no narrative. Yes, they're moving paintings. I just find it satisfying. I find it it's a good exercise in discipline as well. I find it hard to focus a lot of the time, or be disciplined enough to focus, but this is something that means enough to me that I will focus lots of time doing tedious things to make it work the way I want it to.
My dad is actually a painter, and my grandma is a potter, so it sort of was just something, painting was just something I just grew up with and carried on doing until now, and it's still my main focus. I also work in video though, and my videos usually come from my paintings, so I always think of my paintings as the basis of my practice. But yeah, it was mostly just a continuation of what I've been working on since I was a kid.
Yes.
now, do you want to talk about the title of the show?
Well, it was just
That's interesting.
AYYA, yes.
it's sort of
What's
like
It's
fantasy,
yeah.
fantasy Greek names. We're sort of thinking about how our work sort of creates its own kind of mythological language. So you're thinking like, what could we like entitle it that was sort of...
That's another thing to bring up. I think time plays like a crucial role in both of
Oh,
our
for sure.
processes. Like we work actually very differently in terms of that. Like you create paintings a lot quicker than I create anything. Like, I don't know.
Well, they're pretty slow, but the
But it's
actual
all-
processes,
Right.
when I'm actually working, it's very fast.
Right. And as for me,
But
it's,
yeah, it's
it's,
still...
it's just, it's very like multi-faceted. Like I have to do the drawings and then those take like hours because they're just like individual dots that are making up a complete drawing that's like 1 foot large. And then I have to make the movement.
Hey, Robbie.
Hey Robbie, how's it going?
We're doing a video interview.
Oh, nice. Sorry.
Oh, it's all good.
Come back, talk to you later.
Okay.
Where was I? Yes. Then I have to do the movement. Time. Yes.
Time is a theme for us. Yeah.
Yes.
For sure.
Yes. And I think
Ancient time.
It's reflected in the iconography that we choose to use, and also the overall quality of I don't know how you describe it. It's like a quality it possesses. It's like
For sure, yeah.
Its age.
Yeah. Well, we're also playing. Well, especially in my work, with ideas about like the ancient world.
Mm-hmm.
Versus being nostalgic for your childhood. Like one of the main themes that I work with is the hopscotch symbol, and I sort of wanted to connect it to the cross almost, and also like kind of historicizing it and sort of elevating it in that way to elevate the mental state of a child.
How long do you work for the show? I mean, I know yours go a long time, but for the paintings, for
My
example,
paintings,
you
these span pretty much just 2019, and these are the ones that I ended up keeping. Yeah.
so you paint regularly? You have like
Yeah, so there ends up, I just have like a collection of stretchers, and I'll just rip off a painting that I don't like and just restretch it. So these are the ones that survived.
The actual setup didn't take that long. 'Cause
We had to do it pretty
enjoyable.
quickly.
Yes,
Yeah.
we had 5 days total, but we only really used like 2 days.
Yeah, it was a crazy couple of days.
Yes. Yes. Like the last.
Satisfying though.
Yeah, the night before, we had just put in these. Two of my projections are held on these little like shells for the projectors. And I just remember being really sleep deprived and kind of delirious, and deciding, nope, they have to be like a couple of feet to the right, and then we had to take them down.
Lots of last minute decisions
Yes.
and tech troubleshooting.
Yeah, it was interesting to see how much thought goes into each aspect of what
Oh, yeah.
we do. Like the track lighting has to be taken into consideration. Just the exact placement of projectors. Like everything serves like a visual function in this context, which is the time, like to look at everything from a point of view of whether it's functioning with everything else. Yeah.
So for what you're saying is your first time having a show together?
Well, we've had been a part of group shows with Wax
Oh.
Collective.
Yeah. Shout out Wax
So
Collective.
shout out Wax Collective.
Yes.
Everyone in it. But those have been stressful, but they were like
There's
group shows of,
security
like-
in numbers. I think.
Yeah, we had.
Yeah. So I think, I don't know exactly how many members Wax has.
Group of people.
We did a show at Flux,
Oh,
Flux Media Gallery, like in MediaNet
Shout out.
last summer. Yes, shout out Flux. And that was with all of all of wax, which would have been a total of at least 7 to 12 people.
Yeah.
We only had one project each in there, even though we worked collectively to put it all together. And then we did a show at the Wasteland exhibit. As
Climate
well.
anxiety.
Yeah, climate anxiety.
Wasteland.
Yeah.
Which was, what, 3 months ago?
Approximately that long ago. We didn't have long to set up for that one either. We had 2 weeks notice, and then we made something within 2 weeks essentially, and put it up. And then 1 year before the initial, like the Flex Media Gallery show, we did a house show at the Wax House in its heyday.
And that was like sort of our first show.
That was our first show.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's our 4th show, but our first kind of solo show.
Yeah, doing it together for sure.
Yeah. Yes.
You think you are going to have more shows together in the future, or
sure.
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah.
We work well together. There was no conflict.
We didn't yell at each other.
No, I didn't feel agitated even once. We communicate very rationally, and I feel like our work is just so cohesive that it would be kind of a shame to not continue doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hope to see more in Victoria.
Yeah. And more out of Victoria.
And out of Victoria.
Yeah. Yes. This piece is X4CT Me. It was done in 2020 by me, and it was the first animation that I'd ever used an inanimate object in making movement. There are these gloves that are making the movement in this one. The rest of it's a fairly still frame, except for the face, which is kind of hard to discern with the bleeding light through with the daytime, but you'll see it in the middle of the web. I suppose the use of symbolism in this one is fairly prevalent, maybe the most integrated out of all my pieces. I suppose it being, it's like to me it feels like a childish representation of what I've been thinking about a lot lately, which is spiders. That would be reducing it. It's about a lot more than that, but I have a pet spider named Carmine, and she actually has given me a lot of inspiration for the content, and like not the narrative content, but the imagery in my work. I found the lace to be very web-like, and I also created a web with ink on paper, and at the same time, the movement of the hands is the movement that shadow puppets make when they're making the image of a spider. So there's lots of layers that relate back to the theme of spiders. They're very, I think age also is well demonstrated in this one. In all of them actually. The fact that they look like, I don't know, I've manipulated them digitally, but that has in a way made them look more aged and not necessarily like an artifact, but I would say the drawings themselves, like I don't have them with me, but they're very worn and battered, and they do look ancient, like artifacts.
So this is an example of what I was talking about with the idea of juxtaposing myth and the childhood state. So I have these paintings, which is sort of a diptych, and the two symbols behind are of like Greek or Roman columns. I wanted to juxtapose that idea of like ancient myth with this more spontaneous, playful symbol of like the smiley face, and sort of thinking these are like some kind of fruit or something. Doesn't really matter what they are. The colors? Well, the colors just end up being what I find at Valley Village. These are actually bed sheets, so they actually also connect sort of to childhood, because they're sort of like the flannel bed sheets you might sleep in as a child. Yeah, and these seem to be the main colors that you find in those sheets. They also happen to be my favorite colors, so it's kind of ideal. Yeah, and the process is sort of two different stages of work. The first stage is wetting the entire canvas, and then often mixing India ink with like a colored ink, and then just painting onto the wet canvas so it bleeds out and ends up being really faded. And then doing the collage part sort of also has a juxtaposition of focal point. So you'll have this popping out more, even though and this fades into the back more. So I'm playing with like that vision there. Yeah, I called these two oracles, referring to the Oracle of Delphi, but doing my own twist on it, also just reflecting my interest in ancient myth and religious iconography.